who's going to tell us a little bit more about A Midsummer Night's Dream and Shakespeare, and kind of start off our Q&A section of the evening.
I should say I'm a long-time fan of Ballet Co.Laboratory and a very proud parent of Sage Engle there, who is one of the dancers. We don't know exactly when Shakespeare started writing plays. It was sometime around 1589 or 1590. And sometime between 1593 and 1595, he wrote a pair of plays, Romeo and Juliet and A Midsummer Night's Dream, which, looking on Shakespeare's career as later readers and theater goers, we recognize as the moment when Shakespeare's amazing capacity to both move audiences and change audiences and actors emerged, and that something incredibly special was happening in the history of theater and history of English literature. Christian and I got together in a cafe on the Upper West Side early last fall, just as he was beginning to conceive the choreography and thoughts of this, and I had the enormous pleasure of talking with him for an hour or so, maybe two, about A Midsummer Night's Dream, and about what it seems to me that Shakespeare discovers in A Midsummer Night's Dream that becomes part of his dramaturgy for the rest of his career. And this is the idea that a single play can incorporate multiple worlds and very distinctive sets of characters with different, not only different attitudes, different class positions, but also, in the case of A Midsummer Night's Dream, there are characters of different species, there are characters with different relations to mortality and to love and to action. And what this opens in Shakespeare is the idea that maybe if the world you're in does not feel like the right world for you, that possibly there is a world elsewhere, that there is a wood outside Athens where the rules will be different, that there is a city outside Rome, as Coriolanus says when he says, I banish you, there is a world elsewhere in his tragedy. I have watched a couple of streams of rehearsals, but that did not really prepare me for the power and excitement and strangeness of the performance, which is extrapolating the forest scenes, what are often called, following the great critic Northrop Frye, the green world scenes of A Midsummer Night's Dream, where people are living outside the normal set of rules, outside the prescribed set of gender relations, outside the commitments that they think they've made of an erotic kind, of a personal kind in terms of authority relations between people. And in a realm where all these things suddenly seem to become open, also to become chaotic, and to get arbitrarily played with, one can characterize Midsummer Night's Dream as a play about the disintegration and then the reimposition of sort of patriarchal and social authority. But the heart of it really is people discovering that there is a zone where they might be free, I think. And I believe that this is part of what Christian is exploring. And I think at this point, maybe I should hand the mic to Christian and ask him whether what I'm saying is at all true to what he was thinking, because the conversation we had was a long time ago. So, and congratulations.
Thank you, Lars, and thank you all for joining with us tonight. You kind of hit the nail on the head with your wonderful description. If I could add anything, yeah, it was just an exploration that we went on to extrapolate what the shadow psyche, where it exists beneath what is given to us. There are these systems that we have allegedly committed ourselves to, and then there is the innate desires that are within us, or the things that we wish to challenge or crumble, and how those two desires come into a relationship is what the overarching goal was to, there's the system and there's the desire of what we truly want and what we truly desire. I can't really add too much to what you said because you just really nailed it on the head. It's been a wonderful experience to share this with the Ballet Co.Laboratory team. They've been so brave in their exploration with me, and I could not have done this without my collaborator and composer, Andrew Bocher. He's truly a magician and a wizard and soundscape and sound. I don't have anything else to add. You kind of hit it. Do we have any questions? I would like to open this up.
Raise a hand and I'll run to you.
To engage with us.
Coming.
Puck
I
can put a
worked up,
girdle
so.
around the earth in 20 minutes.
So obviously before the show we would walk in and see the beautiful set pieces made out of, I'm guessing, chicken wire. Was there a collaboration between like the set piece and also the found sounds in the composition, so that you're kind of this brings it up to like modern times, and also throwing in pieces of like motorcycle noise in with the music. Was that kind of I have ideas of motivation, but I'd rather hear yours.
Sure, I'll start, and maybe Drew can tag in. There was this sense of beauty in the sound that we wanted to lean into, and there was this idea of encroachment of human existence. And I think Drew and I honestly, at a certain level, were just seeking something other than what was traditionally presented. And so one day, I decided to take a walk in my neighborhood, Washington Heights, in the opening. We had a 12-minute piece of music, and I said, okay, well, I'm walking through this neighborhood, and I'm seeing the construction, I'm hearing the children, I'm hearing all these things, and so let me just see what would occur if I recorded these sounds. And from that point, we started capturing field recordings from many different places. The footsteps were from upstate New York. The birds were from many different regions, and Drew can speak more to this, but the idea was there was the traditional music as we understand it, but something to agitate it as well. It speaks to this environmental crisis that I believe that we're going through of what we have and then what we do as humans that inherently kind of disturbs what's already there and existing for us. So this sound score was an attempt to articulate upon those ideas.
Yeah, and I think going back to the two worlds in Midsummer Night's Dream, between the Athenian world where the patriarchal order is upheld at all costs, and then the world of the woods where sort of anything goes, and highlighting the dichotomy between those two worlds and how that's still very relevant in our times. So some of our recordings, like the one from Washington Heights, you hear the motorcycles, you hear the construction, you hear the cars driving by. I recorded a gas pump one day because it was making a really cool rhythm, and I thought, like, how could I use this in the piece? But then that contrasted with like recordings of birds. Some of the recordings were from the Superior Hiking Trail up on the North Shore, some wood thrush, some vireo in there. And those sounds to me are just so perfect and peaceful, and the bird calls are so well spaced. And that contrasted with the city where it's just like, I mean, you know, it's beautiful in its own way, but contrasting those two worlds, just as Shakespeare was contrasting the Athenian world and the world of the woods and the supernatural. And it's still very relevant today. I think those two worlds still exist, even though it feels as though the anthropomorphic world is even way further encroached on the natural world than it was in 1595, is our best guess, as when this was written or premiered. But it's still very relevant, and those were, some of the themes that we were exploring in music and the set design and the choreography and everything. So I don't know if there's a direct collaboration between the sound and the chicken wire, but it all came from the same ethos.
Okay, we have another question up here.
Actually, this is kind of to continue the conversation about the music. I really am interested in the process or how you actually choreograph to music that has very little meter. It's beautiful, it's organic, but I honestly can't conceive of how you choreograph something and come up with unified movements to something that really doesn't have a rhythmic meter.
I'll speak gently, and I'd also open it up to the people that interpreted this. It was truly a feeling, and that sounds so juvenile in a way, but the intention was that I would hope that they built a rapport amongst themselves to be able to drive most of the things. So by the end, when there is a meter, we're suddenly collected. But in the beginning, I think my intention was that it enhanced this idea of fantasy, that there's an invisible tether that we're all collectively working towards. And you see them, they're constantly working in time to hold themselves together, as we do every day, or at least as I do every day, collectively. But I don't know if you all want to speak more to what that experience was like on the inside.
Sure. And I suppose we should introduce ourselves. I'm Rosa, I played Helena. I think Christian summed it up yesterday in rehearsal best. Like, we finished the last run yesterday, and he said, "You're not gonna replicate this tomorrow." And he was right. It was very different today. Everything's a little bit different every day because of the way things kind of shake out, and there isn't like a count to follow in most of the music. So it is just like a lot of looking out of the corner of your eye and feeling the people around you, and telling the story in the context, and noticing the kind of landmarks that we've built.
To speak on the rhythm of all of us working together, I think that this show, we started working on it in like mid-August, early August, and we've kind of just kept it up throughout the past, 6-ish, many months. And I feel like it really has allowed all of the people in the show to really grow closer to one another, and we did build a very nice rapport, and we're able to just kind of predict each other's movements because we've had to throughout this whole show. And then to speak on my part when I'm speaking and dancing, I've sang and danced in a musical, and that's what I was kind of prepared for coming into this, but it was very different because I don't have a meter to be singing with. I have nothing. So it was, instead of aligning what I'm saying to the music, it's aligning what I'm saying to my movement. And that was a really interesting shift in my brain that I had to deal with.
Okay, I see one here. You got that?
Did you always know you wanted to integrate pieces of the original manuscript into the performance, or what was your motivation behind putting those spoken word moments inside?
Yes, I contemplated for a very long time whether or not I would incorporate the spoken word, but I think Shakespeare's text is so rich, and the deeper that I involved myself into the text, it felt as though there was just so much opportunity to do so, and sometimes dancing justifies it, and sometimes dancing alone does not. And sometimes you do, you're awarded the opportunity to work with artists that are able to handle both worlds. And once I knew that opportunity was there, we just kind of walked through the door and allowed the obscurity to happen. I didn't want to shy away from the opportunity just because it was a dance piece. I really would like to continue to create theater that sometimes dance justifies that, and sometimes, again, alone it doesn't. So that was my intention, just trying to follow that instinct.
There was another question up there at the same time. Sorry, Rachel, to make you go.
That's okay.
I'm thinking about the donkey. And does that bring the shadow world together with the human world, or I need a little more information about that donkey.
Well, there are really three casts that they intermingle at various points in Shakespeare's play, The Midsummer Night's Dream. There is a set of high-born Athenian young people and the older and even higher Theseus, who's about to marry the captured Amazon queen, Hippolyta, and then the four lovers, Hermia, Helena, Demetrius, and Lysander. And Hermia's nasty father, Aegeus, are the sort of Athenian cast. Then there is a set of Athenian workmen led by, who are forming an impromptu theater company, sort of like the guild companies that put on the cycle plays to tell the story, to tell the Christian story more or less from creation through the second coming of Christ, in earlier medieval productions that were done by what are the equivalent trade unions, the medieval Renaissance equivalent. There's such a group in Athens, working men, who bottom is a weaver, flute is a bellows mender, and so on. They are trying to put on a play. And the play they're putting on is Pyramus and Thisbe, which is in fact a tragic love story, rather in a way like Romeo and Juliet, about the lovers who speak to each other through a wall and then rush off into the forest, and a lion appears to kill one of them and the other one commits suicide, and so forth. I mean, you can fill in the rest of the stuff. And then there are the fairies, and one of the things that the fairies do, apparently, is keep the natural world in order when they dance with each other and are loving to each other. But because they're quarreling about a changeling boy, whom Titania appears to have inherited more or less from the boy's mother, who was a votress of her order, but being mortal of the child she died. And Oberon wants to raise the child and turn him into a forester. So the two of them are quarreling about this human changeling child. this brings in all sorts of stuff about fairies that I'm not going to go into. Having what the sort of utility of the idea of fairies was for human beings. You could explain birth defects or cognitive difficulties in terms of the fairies switching children in the cradle. And Puck, who is Oberon's servant, is also an agent and sort of Batman. Puck, whose gender is somewhat indeterminate, at one point is charged with bewitching with this love flower not only the lovers, but also Titania to get her to be obedient to Oberon again. But he also finds the actors rehearsing in a grove, in secret because they don't want anybody to know their plot, and he thinks these are such idiots. What hempen homespuns have we swaggering here, so near the bower of our fairy queen? He says, because Titania is taking a nap. And so he disperses them, terrifies them, and he bewitches Bottom by putting an ass's head on him. And that's why there is a donkey's head on Bottom in the play. And Titania falls in love with Bottom because he's the first thing that she sees when she wakes up after having the love juice dripped in her eye. That's probably more than you want to know.
In this rendition, we were trying to first capture Itzabria's interpretation, this divine, feminine, untouched, magical, powerful presence that when she asserts herself, Oberon takes agency. There's a theft of her autonomy. And he reduces her to submitting herself to the lowest of society. But also Bottom is one of the most endearing characters, I feel, in the entire work. He is like he's the everyman's man. He's just trying to make it and be it. And there is a dialogue there that I thought was worth leaning into, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Hi. At the risk of sounding ignorant, I have not read the play. So my interpretation was solely based on feelings and solely based on the relationship of the dancers rather than putting the story that I know to movement. So I'm interested as a choreographer and as a leader in this process, what was your coaching like to get these feelings out of the dancers, but then also to the dancers, what was your process like tapping into these characters and tapping into these feelings so that I can see that and get it without having read the play to coming into the space?
I'll start by answering with, there's a story and I have my intentions, but in this process, I believe that it was incredibly important to just allow space. And sometimes I do think that was left us in a place of, so what are you feeling, Christian? And I wanted to lean into, I wanted to give them anchors, because I have my intentions, but I believe that there's magic that occurs where my intention is stated, and then these wonderful artists can become hungry and ask the questions and inform, and I am fully okay with either diverting or working with them to be like, yeah, if you feel this way, try this, or maybe not. If it's not in alignment with my overarching goal, I try to guide, but I try to provide the prompting question, essentially, and I try to provide my ideas of what I'm feeling, but I also try to provide space for these folks to integrate their own understanding.
There was a lot of conversation
conversations to start.
Your lover was going first.
It was a lot of conversations to start. We talked a lot with Christian about the story and how he's differing from the original text. And then what was interesting with this ballet is that, especially for the lovers, rehearsal was spent a lot on just tiny little nuances, like all of our looks, exchanges, tiny steps, almost more than the actual dancing steps itself, because we had all that, and it was building, all of our relationships and seeing, oh, there's this one step, and I don't know how it reads, talking about it and kind of figuring it out, and with the help of the people at the front of the room.
Hi, I'm Grace. I played Lysandra. In the original text, it was Lysander, who was basically ostracized for his lack of wealth. And in this version, I'm being pushed away for who I love, which, when I'm developing my character, to me that's more upsetting and more problematic. I don't understand why I'm being punished for bringing more love to the world. So in the very beginning, when I'm being thrown around on the floor, I'm thinking about, why is this happening to me? But I want stage with my whole heart while I'm dancing. So whenever I'm looking at her, I'm just thinking about reaching and this energy that's being drawn between the two of us. And then when we're dancing together in the forest, we're finally alone, and I think there's this really calm tranquility, and we're super in sync, breathing together, and then in the chaos that really gets destroyed, and then in the end I don't end up getting what I want anyway, but I will keep going.
Yeah. I think we have time for one more question.
First and foremost, congratulations. It was amazing, and I loved every second of it. But also, you chose something that was not only a play by Shakespeare, but also a very famous traditional kind of ballet. And you also changed it in ways musically and with your choreography that evoke things I didn't get from either of those two interpretations. And I'm just curious about how you kind of walk the line of honoring the original piece and then transforming it into something that really resonated with today's day and age.
As we got deeper into the text and as I got deeper into the text, it just became clear to me that the same things that Shakespeare was challenging in his writing during the times of the Elizabethan era we have a lot of similarities in the current day and age. And so, simply put, I think we just kind of ran with it and leaned in. There's elements of religious persecution. There's elements of true desire. There are elements of environmentalism. And when questioning how to approach, I just kind of looked around. We're living in a crazy time right now. There's an enhanced visibility of the chaos and violence of the times that we're living in. When Zoe and I were, for years, when we were constructing this idea or how to get here, this was the time during Roe versus Wade. We're living in a time of global conflict and genocide and violence. There's so many things that are happening right now that are so similar to what Shakespeare was challenging in the time. So upon further investigation, once I got past my anger with the text, because when I first read the text, I was angry because all of the female identifying characters, I was like, whoa, they don't get anything. They're robbed. And why do we need to tell this story? And if we have to tell this story, I believed there was an opportunity for reclamation, and it's fantasy. and it's daydreaming, and it's also an opportunity to put down what we desire for, I don't know if it's a more equilateral world, but it's something different, and there's a change that can occur. So that was my intention, and just providing a space to allow, this is so corny, but to allow a space to dream, you know what I mean? To allow a space to imagine, okay, this is what the standard is and what we know, what is familiar. What else? And how far can we go into the absurdity of it? Because in my opinion, the absurdity often illuminates what's actually true. And that was my intention with these folks and trying to bring that to you all.
Thanks everybody for joining us. If you have a question that you were too shy to ask, I'll ask the panel just to stay here for a few more minutes. You can come ask them yourselves. Thank you.